Western films often show the Soviet Union as a place locked in permanent gray, a world of concrete blocks, harsh faces, and constant tension. In these portrayals, life appears flat and joyless, watched from every angle, defined entirely by fear and control. It is an image that feels complete, simple, and dramatic. The reality was quieter, more ordinary, and for many people, more exhausting in ways that rarely appear on screen. To understand life inside the Soviet system, it helps to step away from ideology and spectacle and focus instead on the smallest details. Not speeches or parades, but mornings. Not slogans, but routines. The everyday moments that shape how a person feels inside their own life. So imagine waking up here. It is early morning in the early 1950s. The light outside is still weak, filtered through heavy clouds. The room you wake in is cold, not sharply, but enough that your body notices immediately. Central heating exists, but it is unreliable. Some days the radiators work, some days they do not. You learn never to expect comfort, only to be grateful when it arrives. You lie still for a moment, breathing slowly. As you exhale, you notice a faint mist forming in the air. Even indoors, the temperature never fully forgets winter. Before you open your eyes, sound arrives first. Metal clinking softly in a distant kitchen, footsteps moving down a hallway, someone coughing behind a closed door, pipes groaning as water begins to flow through the building. These sounds are familiar. They form the background of every morning. The apartment you live in was once a single, spacious home, high ceilings, thick walls, designed for one wealthy family before the revolution. Now it has been divided into many rooms. Each room belongs to a different family. Each family lives its entire life inside a single enclosed space. Your family has one room, about 150 square feet. This room is everything. It is where you sleep, eat, talk, argue, store your belongings, and receive guests. During the day, furniture changes function. Beds become couches, tables shift from desks to dining surfaces. Nothing remains fixed for long. Privacy is not expected here. It is not even something most people imagine having. Life overlaps, sounds carry, conversations leak through doors. You learn early how to ignore what you hear and how to avoid being overheard yourself. You sit up slowly. Your bed is narrow and firm. It has been used for years and will be used for years more. Across the room, your parents are still sleeping on a fold-out bed pressed against the wall. Their breathing is steady. Between your beds stands a small table. Yesterday it held dishes and papers. Today it'll be cleared again. Your clothes hang on hooks driven into the wall. There is no closet, there is no dresser. Space cannot be wasted on furniture that serves only one purpose. Every object here earns its place. You dress quietly. Heavy fabric, simple design, nothing stylish. Fashion exists, but it is irrelevant. Clothing must last, clothing must keep you warm. That is enough. Now comes the first decision of the day, the bathroom. 8 families share one bathroom. One toilet, one sink, one bathtub with a shower attachment added long ago. There is no written schedule, but everyone understands the rhythm. Everyone knows when to go and when to wait. Too early and the water will be ice cold. Too late and there will be a line. You gather your toiletries, a toothbrush, a small piece of soap, a towel marked with a stitch so it will not be confused with someone else's. Everyone keeps their personal items separate. This is not a preference, it is survival. You open the door carefully. The hinge squeaks if opened too quickly. Waking a neighbor's child or irritating someone before sunrise can make the entire day harder than it needs to be. The hallway is long and narrow. One dim yellow bulb lights the space. The parquet floor beneath your feet was once polished and elegant. Now it is worn smooth by decades of footsteps. The wallpaper peels in places, revealing layers beneath it. Each layer belongs to a different decade. a different phase of history. The bathroom door is closed. You stop and wait. Others join the line quietly. A factory worker rubbing sleep from his eyes, an elderly woman holding her towel close, a young mother shifting her weight impatiently but saying nothing. There is no conversation, no open frustration. Waiting is simply part of life. When the door finally opens, steam spills into the hallway. The person leaving avoids eye contact and moves quickly away. You step inside. The bathroom is plain and tired. The sink is cracked, the bath is stained, the toilet uses a chain pull. But today, the water is warm. That alone feels like a small gift. You wash quickly. There's no time to linger. You know others are waiting. 7 minutes, 8 minutes. You dry your face, gather your things, and step back into the hallway. The kitchen is already active. This room belongs to everyone and no one. Each family has a designated shelf in the refrigerator, a cabinet for dry goods, sometimes a burner attached to the stove. Over the years, the stove has been modified again and again to accommodate multiple families cooking at once. Conflicts happen here, quietly and often. Who used the last of the sugar? Who left a burner dirty? Who cooked too long during the dinner rush? Arguments rarely explode. Instead, tension lingers, managed through silence and routine. Mornings are efficient. Your mother heats water for tea, strong black tea, the foundation of every morning. A samovar sits nearby, dented but functional. It has survived revolution, war, relocation, and scarcity. It will likely survive much more. Your father has already left. Several mornings each week, he rises before dawn to stand in line at the bakery. Bread is one of the few reliable pleasures of the Soviet life. It is affordable, it is filling, but it requires patience. On other days, neighbors take turns. These informal arrangements keep families fed. Mutual aid here is not ideological, it is practical. You eat quickly. Buckwheat porridge with a precious spoonful of sugar. Tea poured strong enough to wake the body fully. There is talk of oranges today. Someone heard there might be oranges at the state shop nearby. The word itself feels bright. Oranges arrive rarely, from the south, sometimes from abroad. If they appear, one will be saved, perhaps for New Year's. You take your coat from the hook. Heavy wool, designed to last for years, not seasons. The stairwell smells faintly of cabbage and tobacco. The elevator, installed decades ago, has not worked for as long as anyone can remember. No one mentions it anymore. You walk down 5 flights of stairs. Your footsteps echo in the enclosed space. Outside, the cold greets you immediately. It is Leningrad, October. The sky is the color of wet stone. A fine drizzle hangs in the air. Not quite rain, but enough to dampen fabric and mood alike. People move quickly, collars turned up, heads down. The tram stop is crowded. Workers gather close, sharing warmth without acknowledging it. When the tram arrives, it is already full. Still, everyone squeezes in. Bodies press together. No one apologizes, no one complains. This closeness is impersonal and temporary. Through fogged windows, the city passes by. Imperial buildings divided into communal apartments. New blocks built hastily after the war. Posters promising success and progress. Faces inside the tram look tired, resigned. Yet under that fatigue, there is something else. Security. Everyone has a job. Everyone belongs somewhere. At the factory gates, papers are checked with minimal interest. The guard recognizes you. Inside, noise fills the air immediately. Metal striking metal, machines pounding, foremen shouting to be heard. The air smells of oil, heat, and sweat. Your work is repetitive and precise. You operate a machine shaping metal components. These parts will go somewhere else, become something else. You will never see the final result. There is quiet pride here. Your hands are doing something real. Hours pass in rhythm. The body remembers movements even when the mind drifts. You think of small things, saving for a radio, getting your own apartment someday, seeing your name on the board of exemplary workers.
Around you, the system moves. Plans, quotas, numbers. Officially, everything is progressing. Unofficially, everyone knows the gaps. Materials run short, quality slips when deadlines approach, reports are adjusted. This is not rebellion, it is adaptation. By midday, the factory horn sounds. 10 minutes to stretch, to drink weak tea, to exchange a few words, then back to work. This is life inside the Soviet Union. Not dramatic, not constantly fearful, but demanding, negotiated, built from shared spaces and quiet understandings. The system promises equality and security. It delivers some of both. It also delivers limitation, inconvenience, and constant adjustment. And still, people endure. They build routines, they form relationships, they create meaning from repetition. Morning becomes memory. The body settles into labor. The mind drifts between obligation and hope. This is where the long story.
The afternoon does not announce itself with ceremony. It simply arrives, sliding quietly into place as the factory settles into its long middle hours. The initial urgency of the morning has faded. Bodies have warmed to the work. Movements become smoother, more economical, almost automatic. Hands know what to do even when the mind drifts elsewhere. Machines continue their steady rhythm. The sound is constant, enveloping, a presence that presses gently against thought until it becomes background. Metal meets metal, belts turn, steam hisses softly somewhere beyond view. The air carries the familiar mixture of oil, dust, and heat, a smell that clings to clothes long after the shift ends. You stand at your station, eyes occasionally flicking to the clock mounted high on the wall. Time moves differently here. Minutes stretch, then compress. Hours feel long, yet somehow disappear without being noticed. This distortion becomes familiar. It shapes how you measure your days, how you think about effort and rest. Around you, others work in parallel silence. Some hum quietly, some mutter to themselves. Some stare with practiced focus at the narrow slice of reality their job requires. Conversation is sparse now. Words cost energy, and energy must be conserved. This is the heart of Soviet industrial life. Not the speeches, not the banners, the repetition, the endurance, the quiet agreement to keep going. You know your quota. Everyone does. The numbers are posted clearly, written in neat columns that suggest order and certainty. The plan always looks achievable on paper. It rarely accounts for missing materials, worn tools, or machines that should have been replaced years ago. When shortages appear, as they often do, no announcement is made, no explanation is offered. The expectation is understood without being spoken. You adapt. If a part is missing, you improvise. If a machine runs slower than expected, you compensate elsewhere. If quality begins to slip under pressure, you adjust just enough to meet inspection without triggering questions. This is not sabotage. It is the quiet craft of making reality fit the plan. Supervisors walk the floor occasionally. Their expressions are serious, but not hostile. They are under pressure too. Above them sit managers. Above managers sit ministries. The chain extends upward, growing more abstract with each level. By the time decisions return to the factory floor, they often arrive stripped of context, reduced to numbers and deadlines. During a brief pause, you glance toward a nearby worker. His machine has been making a strange sound all morning. Too high-pitched, too uneven. He notices your look and shrugs. There's no point reporting it yet. Reporting creates paperwork. Paperwork creates attention. Attention creates risk. If the machine fails completely, then something will be done. Until then, it continues. This unspoken logic governs much of daily life. Problems are managed, not eliminated. Stability matters more than perfection. Keeping things moving is valued above fixing them properly. At mid-afternoon, another horn sounds. This time it signals a longer break. Workers step away from machines, stretching stiff backs and tired hands. Some head toward the cafeteria, others step outside for fresh air, grateful even for the damp chill. You follow the latter group. The factory yard is a wide stretch of concrete bordered by brick walls and metal fences. Smoke rises from tall stacks, blending into the low sky. Beyond the factory walls, the city spreads outward, layered and complex. In the distance, faint through the haze, you can sense the presence of water. The Baltic Sea lies not far away, even if it cannot be seen clearly. Leningrad carries its history heavily, built as a window to the west, scarred by revolution, nearly starved during the siege of the war. Every street feels weighted with memory. Even now, decades later, that endurance shapes the city's mood. Someone lights a cigarette. Another worker accepts it silently. Tobacco smoke drifts upward, briefly overpowering the industrial smell. These small moments of shared pause matter. They break the day into manageable pieces. Soon enough, the horn calls everyone back inside. Work resumes. The second half of the shift often feels heavier than the first. Muscles tire, attention wavers, yet there is also a subtle urgency now. No one wants to leave unfinished tasks for the next shift. Incomplete work reflects poorly. It suggests inefficiency. It invites questions. You adjust your pace slightly. Not faster, just steadier. The goal is not excellence. The goal is completion. As the afternoon wears on, small dramas unfold quietly. A supervisor argues with a supplier over the telephone. A delivery arrives missing half its expected contents. Someone quietly sets aside a handful of components for later use, unofficial reserves saved for a future shortage. Everyone knows these reserves exist. No one mentions them openly. This parallel system runs beneath the official one. It is invisible on paper, but essential in practice. Without it, production would stop far more often than it already does. Near the end of the shift, activity accelerates. The final hour brings a noticeable change in energy. Movements sharpen. Conversations increase slightly. The clock becomes more important. When the horn finally sounds again, signaling the end of the day, there is a collective release. Machines are shut down, tools are cleaned carefully. Discipline here matters. A clean workspace signals order, even if deeper disorder remains hidden. You remove your work clothes and change back into street clothes. The changing room is warm and humid, filled with the rustle of fabric and muted voices. Plans are exchanged quietly. Someone mentions a delivery rumored to arrive at a nearby shop. Another asks about bread availability tomorrow morning. Outside, evening has begun its slow descent. The tram ride home feels different now. Bodies are looser, faces softer. Conversation remains limited, but the tension of work has eased. You watch the city slide past again, lights beginning to glow in windows, street lamps reflecting off wet pavement. Back at the apartment building, the stairwell smells familiar. Someone has cooked cabbage. Someone else smoked near the entrance. You climb the stairs, listening to footsteps echo above and below. Inside the communal apartment, the corridor is livelier now. Doors open and close. Children move between rooms. Voices rise and fall. The kitchen is busy again, each family negotiating space for dinner. Your mother greets you quietly. Your father has returned from work. Bread sits on the table, wrapped carefully. The day's success is measured in small achievements. Warm water in the morning, bread in the evening. No major problems at work. Dinner is simple. Soup, bread, perhaps a small piece of meat if it was available. You eat slowly now, standing or sitting on the edge of the bed, wherever space allows. Conversation is cautious but relaxed. News from neighbors, a comment about factory rumors, a mention of someone's illness. Politics remain distant, not forbidden, but not invited either. After dinner, the room shifts again. The table is cleared, dishes are washed in the shared sink. Someone hums quietly.
The radio plays softly from another room, carrying music or news through thin walls. You sit on the bed, now serving as a couch, and let the day settle inside you. Fatigue spreads evenly through your body, not exhaustion, but a steady weariness. This is the texture of life here. Work that demands attention without offering fulfillment, evenings that provide rest without escape, a system that organizes existence into predictable patterns, making survival possible even when comfort remains out of reach. Before sleep, you think briefly about the future. Not in grand terms, not about ideology or history, about practical things. A new coat someday, a radio, perhaps years from now an apartment of your own. These thoughts are quiet, unambitious, and they are enough. As night deepens, the apartment gradually settles, voices lower, lights go out one by one, pipes click softly as water cools. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cries briefly, then falls silent again. You lie down. The room is dark now, except for a faint glow from the streetlight outside. The sounds of the city fade into a distant hum. Tomorrow will bring another morning, another calculation, another day of adaptation. For now, there is rest. The body releases its hold on effort, thoughts loosen, the edges of the day blur. Sleep arrives not as an escape, but as a necessary pause, a brief return to stillness before the rhythm begins again. And so the night closes gently around you, holding this ordinary life in quiet suspension until morning returns.
Morning returns with a familiar softness, not as a sharp beginning, but as a gradual re-entry into movement. Light seeps through thin curtains. Sounds emerge slowly. The city stirs again, repeating a rhythm that feels both endless and dependable. Time moves forward, almost without being noticed. Years pass. By the late 1950s and early 1960s, life has begun to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. The war feels further away now, no longer an open wound, but a memory carried quietly. The terror of earlier decades has softened, not vanished, but loosened enough to allow breathing space. People still measure their words, still avoid drawing attention, but the constant edge of fear has dulled. Change does not arrive suddenly. It rarely does. It comes instead through small adjustments, through new buildings appearing at the edges of cities, through routines becoming slightly easier, through the quiet realization that certain things once considered impossible are now slowly becoming normal. You no longer live in the communal apartment. That alone feels unreal at first. Your new home stands in a row of identical 5-story buildings, constructed quickly and efficiently. These apartments are small, plain, and cheaply built. The walls are thin, the ceilings are low, the stairwells echo. From the outside, the buildings look almost interchangeable, like drawers in a filing cabinet designed for people. But inside, something extraordinary exists: privacy. You unlock your own door. You step into your own space. No corridor shared with neighbors, no kitchen negotiations, no bathroom schedule. The apartment is modest: 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in comfortably. But it is yours, entirely. The first nights here feel strange, too quiet. You wake expecting footsteps in the hallway, voices beyond the door, the clatter of shared life. Instead, there is silence, not emptiness, just stillness. It takes time to trust it. The morning routine changes completely. You wake when you choose, or when the alarm clock rings. You walk into the bathroom without checking a hallway first. The water is yours. The mirror is yours. There is no sense of being watched or hurried. These are small freedoms, but they reshape how the day feels from the very beginning. Breakfast is still simple: bread, tea, perhaps butter if it was available recently. But you prepare it at your own pace. You sit at a small table. You do not stand to save time.
You do not listen for footsteps outside the door. Outside, the city has grown. New districts stretch outward from the center, planned carefully according to Soviet urban design. Housing blocks grouped around schools, shops, clinics, and public transport. Everything arranged to minimize unnecessary movement. Life is meant to function efficiently, collectively. Your commute now takes you underground. The Moscow metro opens before you like a hidden palace. Descending the escalator feels ceremonial. The stations are vast and luminous, decorated with marble, mosaics, sculptures, chandeliers. Scenes of workers, soldiers, farmers, scientists. Images of progress frozen in stone. Everyday life passes through these halls. Trains arrive precisely. Doors open and close with practiced certainty. People stand close but quietly. Conversations are rare. Most riders stare ahead or downward, conserving energy, saving themselves for the workday ahead. This underground world feels removed from the surface city, cleaner, brighter, more intentional. It is a reminder of what the state wishes to present itself as capable of creating. At work, your role has changed. Years of steady performance have brought promotion. You are no longer just a worker at a machine. You oversee others now. A small section of the factory depends on your decisions. The responsibility feels heavier than expected. Your office is a glass-walled cubicle overlooking the factory floor. From here, you can see machines starting up, workers settling into place, the familiar choreography of production unfolding each morning. On your desk sits a photograph of your family, a telephone, stacks of paperwork. Paper defines much of your day now. Reports, forms, charts. Everything must be documented. Numbers travel upward through layers of administration, feeding the vast planning apparatus that claims to guide the entire economy. Whether these numbers reflect reality accurately is uncertain. What matters is that they are submitted correctly. You learn to divide your attention. One eye on the factory floor, one eye on the forms. This dual focus becomes a skill. Without it, nothing functions properly. Meetings fill the early hours. Supervisors gather around long tables. Decisions are announced, targets adjusted, instructions delivered without discussion. Political language fills the room, but practical understanding lives beneath it. When targets increase unexpectedly, no one asks how materials will arrive. Experience has taught everyone that such questions lead nowhere. Instead, minds turn quietly to improvisation. Reserves will be found, processes adjusted, quality managed just enough. The workday unfolds through problem-solving rather than creation. Machines fail, shipments arrive incomplete, tools wear out long before replacements appear. You rely on maintenance workers who know how to coax life from aging equipment. You rely on personal connections in other factories to exchange favors and parts. This invisible network keeps production alive. After work, evenings feel differently now. You return to your apartment, you close the door behind you. The city remains present outside, but your space holds you separately. You cook when ingredients allow. You read when electricity is steady. You listen to the radio, tuning between stations, catching fragments of music and news. Television exists, but programming is limited. A few channels, carefully selected content. Certain shows become national events, watched by millions at the same time. Conversations at work reference them casually, creating a shared cultural thread. On weekends, the city softens. Saturday remains a workday, though shorter. Sunday offers a pause. Families clean, repair, prepare. Services are limited, so people learn to fix things themselves. Furniture is reinforced, wiring adjusted, shelves added. Apartments evolve through effort rather than consumption. When weather allows, people escape the city briefly. Parks fill with walkers. Forests near the outskirts host picnics. Riversides attract swimmers in summer. Mushroom gathering becomes a quiet ritual, passed down through generations. These moments provide balance. They remind people of something older than ideology. Evenings often end in kitchens.
Friends gather around small tables. Tea flows endlessly. Conversations wander between work, family, books, films, and cautious observations about life. Certain topics remain avoided. Others are approached indirectly through humor or understatement. Trust matters here. These private spaces allow honesty to exist without consequence. They create relief from constant adjustment. As years continue to pass, a new generation grows up entirely within this environment. Children born after the war know nothing of hunger or siege. They grow up in apartments like yours. They attend schools built specifically for them. Their world feels more stable than the one their parents knew. One such child is Natasha. She wakes in her own room, a small room but private. Her desk holds textbooks and notebooks. Her shelves hold approved literature alongside carefully chosen translations of foreign adventure stories. Education is central here, serious, demanding. School uniforms hang ready each morning. Participation in youth organizations is expected, not forced but understood. Belonging matters. Non-participation creates questions that echo later. Natasha ties her red scarf automatically. The ritual feels ordinary to her. It is part of growing up. School days are long. Mathematics, science, literature. History taught through carefully structured interpretation. Memorization plays a role, but so does genuine intellectual rigor. Soviet education emphasizes depth, particularly in technical subjects. Children learn discipline early. They learn how to perform publicly and think privately. They absorb the system's expectations while forming quiet opinions of their own. After school, activities fill the hours. Choir practice, sports, chess clubs, technical circles. These programs serve many purposes. They occupy children while parents work. They develop skills useful to the state. They also provide friendship and enjoyment. Life feels ordered, predictable. As Natasha grows, her awareness changes. She hears whispers about foreign music, about films seen at private gatherings, about clothes worn by someone's cousin from abroad. These fragments spark curiosity without offering clear alternatives. Outward conformity remains easy. Private exploration grows slowly. By the time she reaches adulthood, this dual awareness feels natural. Not deception, adaptation. The city continues to expand. The metro grows deeper. Factories hum steadily. Apartments fill with accumulated objects, small signs of personal taste emerging within standardized space. Life in the Soviet Union settles into a rhythm that feels stable, even permanent. Few imagine its end. They plan careers, apply for housing, build friendships, raise children, take vacations when allocations allow, celebrate holidays that blend official ceremony with personal warmth. From the inside, the system feels heavy but solid. It organizes life thoroughly. It limits options. It also removes certain uncertainties. For many, that trade feels acceptable. As night falls, lights glow in countless windows. Each apartment holds its own quiet life. Meals eaten, radios playing, conversations unfolding softly. The city breathes. And within this vast structure, individual lives continue, shaped by history, constrained by policy, yet filled with personal meaning drawn from small, ordinary moments. Tomorrow will arrive again, and with it, another day shaped by routines that have become, for better or worse, home. Time does not announce its passing. It accumulates quietly, layering itself over routines until change is felt only in retrospect. By the late 1960s, the Soviet Union feels settled in a particular rhythm. The dramatic upheavals of earlier decades have receded into memory. What remains is a system that functions steadily, predictably, and with growing heaviness. Natasha is now a teenager. Her mornings begin with the sound of an alarm clock rather than the overlapping noise of communal living. She reaches out, silences it, and lies still for a moment, staring at the ceiling of her small room. The room is modest, but unmistakably hers. A narrow bed, a desk pressed against the wall, shelves holding school books, notebooks, and a few carefully chosen volumes of fiction. This private space matters more than she can yet articulate. It gives her room to think without interruption, to imagine without being overheard. She rises, dresses in her school uniform, and ties her red scarf with practiced ease. The motion is automatic now. The scarf marks her place within a larger collective, a visible symbol of belonging. Almost everyone wears it. Not wearing it would draw attention, and attention is something people learn to avoid early. In the kitchen, breakfast is already underway. Porridge simmers on the stove, black bread sits on the table, tea steams gently in chipped cups. The radio plays quietly, delivering a familiar sequence of news, music, and announcements. Industrial achievements, agricultural progress, friendship between socialist nations. Her parents listen without comment. Natasha eats quickly. There is a pioneer meeting before classes today. These meetings are routine, woven into the structure of school life. They include songs, discussions, plans for collective activities. The language is familiar, repeated so often it becomes almost soothing. Outside, the morning air is cool. Other children in identical uniforms converge from surrounding buildings, forming small streams that flow toward the school. The building itself is solid and imposing, designed to project seriousness and order. A statue of Lenin stands near the entrance, watching silently as generations pass beneath his gaze. Inside, the pioneer troop gathers in the assembly hall. The ceremony unfolds with practiced precision. The flag is raised, the oath is recited. Voices speak in unison. For some, the words feel stirring. For others, they are simply words. The collective experience itself carries weight. Classes begin. The school day is long and structured. 45-minute periods, short breaks, little unoccupied time. Mathematics comes first. The teacher's voice is firm, precise. Errors are corrected immediately. Carelessness is not tolerated. Soviet education takes mathematics seriously. It is a foundation for engineering, science, and industry, areas where the country measures itself against the world. Students take notes carefully. They solve problems on the board. They memorize formulas. The pace is demanding. Literature follows. Russian classics are taught extensively. Pushkin, Tolstoy, Chekhov. Their works are presented not only as artistic achievements, but as moral and social texts. Interpretations are guided, framed through an ideological lens that emphasizes criticism of the old order and alignment with progressive values. History is taught carefully. Events are arranged into a clear narrative of struggle and advancement. The direction of history is never in doubt. Questions are allowed, but only certain ones. Natasha listens, learns, absorbs. She does well. Her aptitude for mathematics and science is clear. Teachers notice. Notes are made. Paths begin to form quietly, long before any formal decisions are announced. Lunch is served in the school cafeteria. Soup, meat patties, compote. The meal is subsidized, identical for everyone. No one eats better than anyone else. Uniformity reinforces equality. The system takes pride in this. Afternoons include physical education. Exercise is treated as a civic duty as much as personal benefit. Strong bodies support strong minds.
Pre-military training is introduced gradually, especially for boys, but girls participate as well. Fitness is preparation for productivity and defense alike. After classes, extracurricular activities fill the remaining hours. Today, Natasha attends choir practice. Patriotic songs are rehearsed for an upcoming holiday. Other days might include chess club, technical circles, or sports. These programs occupy time, develop skills, and foster collective identity. They are, often, genuinely enjoyable. As Natasha grows older, subtle changes take place within her awareness. She begins to notice the gap between public enthusiasm and private conversation. Teachers speak confidently in class, but lower their voices in the staff room. Parents repeat official phrases in public, but use different language at home. At 14, Natasha joins the Komsomol, the Communist Union of Youth. Membership is more consequential than pioneer participation. It becomes part of one's permanent record. It influences future opportunities, university admission, job placement, housing allocation. Joining is expected. Declining would raise questions. Meetings are held, reports are given, volunteer activities are organized. Participation is visible. Enthusiasm is noted. Natasha participates earnestly enough. She attends meetings, completes assignments. She does not stand out excessively, nor does she withdraw. This balance is learned intuitively. At home, conversations remain cautious but warmer. The kitchen table continues to serve as a center of family life. Meals are simple but shared. News from work, updates about neighbors, occasional comments about shortages or delays, phrased carefully. Sometimes a small treasure appears. Oranges, coffee, a piece of chocolate, acquired through personal connections or workplace distribution. These items carry weight beyond their material value. They represent effort, access, and luck. Evenings sometimes include television. Programming is limited, but certain shows capture national attention. Dramas, films, documentaries. The same scenes are watched by millions simultaneously, creating shared reference points that cross regional and social boundaries. Natasha absorbs these experiences quietly. They form the backdrop of her adolescence. By the time she reaches 18, decisions approach. Her academic record is strong, particularly in mathematics and science. Teachers encourage her toward technical fields, engineering, physics, medicine. These areas align with state priorities. They also promise better prospects. Natasha considers her own preferences. She enjoys languages, literature. The idea of studying foreign cultures intrigues her. But she also understands the practical reality. Engineers receive housing sooner. They have clearer career paths. Her parents advise gently, without pressure. University admission is competitive, but free. Financial barriers do not exist. Instead, places are limited by planning. The state determines how many specialists are needed in each field. Individual desire matters, but it is secondary. Komsomol recommendations carry weight. Active participation improves chances. Natasha attends meetings diligently. She understands the stakes. Conversations with friends reveal a complex picture. Some are enthusiastic, some are resigned, some quietly skeptical. Few express outright opposition. That feels unnecessary. The system appears stable. Inefficient, perhaps, but enduring. Privately, young people explore other influences. Music from the West circulates quietly, recorded onto tapes, copied again and again. The sound quality is poor, but the novelty is powerful. Clothing styles are observed, imitated subtly when possible. These explorations remain private. Public conformity continues. This dual awareness does not feel dishonest. It feels adaptive, a way to live fully within boundaries that cannot be changed individually. As Natasha prepares to leave school behind her, the future feels structured but not empty. There are paths forward: education, work, independence of a limited but meaningful kind. The city around her continues to expand and evolve. New buildings rise. Old ones decay slowly. The metro extends further underground. Factories hum steadily. Life feels predictable, stable. Few imagine that the stability rests on foundations already under strain. For now, the system provides direction. It organizes lives from childhood through adulthood. It offers security in exchange for flexibility, structure in place of freedom. And for many, including Natasha, that exchange feels manageable. The days move forward, carrying her with them, shaping her quietly, preparing her for a life that will unfold entirely within this vast, carefully constructed world.
Adulthood arrives gradually, without a clear dividing line. There is no single morning when everything feels different. Instead, responsibility accumulates quietly, layered onto habits formed years earlier. By the early 1970s, Natasha is no longer preparing for life within the system. She is fully inside it. Her days now begin with work. The alarm rings early, not painfully so, but insistently enough to pull her from sleep. She rises from her bed in a small apartment allocated through her workplace after years on a waiting list. Compared to the communal apartments her parents once knew, this space feels expansive. Compared to the images she has glimpsed of life elsewhere, it remains modest. The apartment is standardized, the same wall unit found in countless other homes, the same sofa, the same lamps. But small personal details soften the uniformity. Books arranged carefully, a plant on the windowsill, a framed photograph of friends taken during a holiday by the sea. She prepares breakfast quietly. Tea, bread, butter when available, sometimes a boiled egg. The radio plays in the background, delivering familiar voices and predictable messages. Industrial achievements, international developments framed carefully, weather reports. Natasha listens without really listening. The radio provides sound more than information. It fills the silence, creating continuity between days. Her commute takes her through the metro. She stands among dozens of others, bodies close but minds distant. The stations still impress her even after years of daily travel. Marble columns, bronze figures, chandeliers glowing softly. The contrast between the grandeur below and the plainness above remains striking. At the research institute where she works, the atmosphere is quieter than in factories. Offices replace production lines. Laboratories replace machines. Yet the same structural logic governs everything. Plans arrive from above. Targets are defined. Reports are required. Progress must be demonstrated even when real advancement moves slowly. Natasha's work involves calculations, measurements, incremental improvements. She collaborates with colleagues who share similar training and similar frustrations. Equipment is often outdated. Supplies arrive late or not at all. Creativity exists, but it is constrained by limitations that feel increasingly artificial. Despite this, there is pride in the work. Being an engineer carries status. It signals education, competence, contribution. Family members speak of her accomplishments with quiet satisfaction. Housing, however, remains a constant concern. Her apartment is adequate, but small. She dreams of something larger someday, perhaps after marriage, perhaps after another promotion. Waiting is understood. Everyone waits. Evenings bring relief. After work, Natasha returns home, changes clothes, and prepares a simple meal. Cooking remains a practical exercise rather than a creative one. Ingredients dictate possibilities. Recipes are flexible by necessity. Meals adapt to what is available rather than what is desired. Sometimes she eats alone. Sometimes she meets friends. Cinema plays an important role in leisure. Tickets are inexpensive. Films are heavily curated, but within those constraints,
talented directors find ways to explore human complexity. Certain films become shared experiences, quoted endlessly, remembered fondly. After the cinema, friends often gather in cafes. These spaces are modest but meaningful. They offer a place to sit, to talk, to exist outside home and work. Lines are common, quality is inconsistent, but the act of gathering matters more than the setting. Music circulates quietly. Official recordings play on the radio. Unofficial tapes pass hand to hand. Western bands appear in fragments, songs recorded onto reused tapes, copied repeatedly. Sound quality degrades with each generation, but recognition persists. Listening becomes an intimate act, a quiet rebellion that does not seek to challenge openly, only to expand inner space. On weekends, life slows slightly. Saturday remains a workday, but shorter. Sunday offers pause. Apartments fill with domestic activity, cleaning, repairs, preparing food for the week. Services are limited, so people learn to fix things themselves. Shelves are built, wiring adjusted, furniture reinforced. Nature offers escape. In warmer months, people travel to nearby forests or rivers. Picnics require little beyond bread, tea, and company. Swimming provides relief from heat. Mushroom gathering becomes a ritual, combining practicality with tradition. Winter shifts leisure indoors. Chess clubs, amateur theater, lectures at cultural centers. These activities fill long evenings, offering stimulation when outdoor movement is limited by cold and darkness. Family gatherings remain central. Natasha visits her parents regularly. Their apartment carries accumulated history, furniture worn smooth by years of use, cabinets filled with preserved vegetables prepared months earlier. Conversations unfold slowly around the kitchen table. Her mother takes pride in preparing special meals when ingredients allow. Items acquired through workplace distribution are displayed carefully. Coffee from abroad, chocolate, citrus fruit. These items symbolize connection beyond borders, even when borders remain firmly in place. Her father follows television programs attentively. Certain series captivate the entire country. Spy dramas, historical epics. These shows become shared reference points, discussed at work, at school, in queues. Such shared experiences bridge divisions. Despite inequalities and hierarchies, there remains a common cultural language understood by most. Holidays punctuate the year. Official celebrations blend ideology with genuine festivity. Parades fill streets, banners wave. Afterward, families gather at home. Food is shared. Laughter returns. New Year's stands apart, a secular celebration filled with warmth, decorated trees, gifts, a sense of renewal unburdened by politics. As years pass, Natasha's circle of friends stabilizes. Relationships deepen. Trust grows. These connections provide support beyond what institutions offer. They share information, advice, resources, emotional understanding. In private spaces, conversations are more honest. Friends speak openly about frustrations at work, about inefficiencies, about promises that feel increasingly hollow. These discussions rarely turn towards opposition. They serve instead as release, recognition, mutual validation. The system remains powerful. It shapes careers, housing, travel, expression. But within its boundaries, people carve out meaningful lives. By the mid-1970s, a sense of stagnation begins to settle. Material conditions are stable, but advancement slows. Innovation feels constrained. Younger generations accept benefits as normal rather than remarkable. Older generations compare present comfort favorably to past hardship. Natasha occupies a middle position. She remembers neither terror nor hunger. She benefits from education and stability, but she senses limits more acutely. Travel remains restricted, information filtered, choice constrained. She does not feel oppressed in a dramatic sense. Life is manageable, but there is a persistent awareness of being contained. Evenings remain her refuge. She reads widely, Soviet literature, carefully selected translations, poetry that speaks indirectly about endurance and loss, music that suggests other rhythms of life. Sometimes she sits quietly, watching light fade outside her window. The city hums steadily. Trams run. Lights flicker on across countless apartments. Each window holds a separate story. Each life unfolds within the same framework, yet differently. For now, this framework appears solid. The future feels predictable. Careers will progress slowly. Housing will improve eventually. Children will grow up safer than their parents did. Few imagine collapse. Change, if it comes, is expected to be gradual. Adjustments, reforms, corrections. The idea that the system itself might disappear does not yet exist in ordinary thought. Natasha prepares for sleep. She sets her alarm, turns off the light, lies still for a moment, listening to the city through thin walls. A neighbor's radio, footsteps in the stairwell, water running somewhere above. These sounds anchor her. Tomorrow will bring another workday, another set of calculations, another series of small negotiations between expectation and reality. Life continues, quietly, predictably. And within that predictability, meaning is built piece by piece through relationships, routines, and the private spaces people protect carefully within a system that claims to organize everything.
The years move forward almost without resistance, not because life is easy, but because its shape is familiar. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, the rhythm of Soviet life has settled into something steady and heavy, like a river that no longer rushes but continues to flow with quiet force. Natasha is in her early 30s now. Her life is full in ways that would have seemed unimaginable to her grandparents. She is educated, employed in a respected profession. She lives alone in her own apartment. She has access to culture, to books, to music, to conversations that reach beyond immediate survival. At the same time, she feels a narrowing that is harder to define. Her mornings begin much as they have for years. The alarm clock rings, she rises, washes her face, prepares tea, looks briefly out the window at the city waking below. The view does not change much. Buildings stand in orderly rows. People move with purpose toward bus stops and metro entrances. Work remains central. At the Institute, days are filled with meetings, calculations, revisions, and reports. Projects progress slowly. Equipment remains outdated. Promises of modernization circulate endlessly, rarely fulfilled. Younger engineers arrive with enthusiasm, only to learn quickly how limited initiative can be within rigid structures. Natasha mentors some of them gently. She does not discourage ambition outright, but she teaches caution. Learn the rules, learn who decides, learn when to speak and when to remain silent. This knowledge is not written anywhere. It is transmitted through observation and experience. It becomes part of professional survival. At lunch, colleagues gather in the cafeteria. Food is plain but filling. Conversations remain light. Family news, vacation plans, rumors about upcoming deliveries. Certain topics remain untouched. After work, life shifts inward. Evenings are increasingly spent in private spaces, apartments, kitchens, living rooms filled with mismatched furniture and personal objects collected over years. These spaces become refuges, places where people can relax their public faces. Natasha's apartment reflects her life now. More books, more plants, a sense of permanence.
The walls hold framed photographs and simple art. Handmade decorations appear, small attempts to soften standardized space. Friends visit often. They bring food when they can, a bottle of sweet, sparkling wine, a loaf of bread, preserved vegetables. Everyone contributes what they have. No one expects abundance. Conversation unfolds slowly. Tea is poured again and again. Cups are refilled without asking. The kitchen table becomes the center of the world for a few hours. Here, people speak more freely, not in slogans, not in demands, but in observations, quiet assessments of daily reality, frustration at work, delays, absurdities, laughter at contradictions. Someone mentions a relative who managed to travel abroad for work. Another speaks of a book that is difficult to find but circulating quietly. Music plays softly in the background, sometimes official recordings, sometimes something copied from a copy of a copy. These evenings are deeply valued. They offer connection that feels authentic, a sense of shared understanding, relief from constant adjustment. Parents talk about children, about navigating schools, about teaching them how to succeed without becoming rigid, how to believe enough to belong, but not so much that curiosity disappears. Natasha listens carefully. Many of her friends now have families. Children bring both joy and complexity. They recite official slogans at school, then ask questions at home. Parents answer carefully. They do not want to create fear. They also do not want to lie. This balance becomes one of the defining tasks of adulthood. Outside these apartments, the city continues. Shops remain inconsistent. Some days shelves are full, other days they are empty. Lines appear suddenly and disappear just as quickly. People learn to recognize patterns. Deliveries arrive on certain days, certain times offer better chances. Information spreads through word of mouth. Someone knows someone who saw meat at a shop. Someone heard coffee arrived somewhere else. People adjust plans instantly. Flexibility becomes essential. Money exists, but choice remains limited. Access matters more than income. Connections outweigh currency. This reality does not feel shocking. It is simply how things work. Cultural life remains surprisingly rich. Theaters operate regularly. Tickets are affordable. Ballet, opera, and classical music receive strong state support. Performances draw broad audiences. These events offer beauty and escape within acceptable boundaries. Cinema continues to evolve. Directors find subtle ways to explore moral complexity, personal conflict, and historical ambiguity without crossing lines that would provoke censorship. Audiences learn to read between scenes, to recognize implication. Certain films become shared experiences across generations. Television remains limited but influential. News programs follow predictable formats. Viewers rarely believe everything they hear, but they rarely challenge it openly either. Television becomes background noise in many homes, except during especially popular broadcasts. The sense of stagnation grows slowly, not as a crisis, not as a collapse, but as inertia. Technological gaps become more visible to those who work in technical fields. Innovations take too long to implement. Bureaucracy slows everything. Creativity feels constrained by approval processes and political caution. Natasha notices her own ambitions shifting. Earlier, she imagined advancement, recognition, larger projects. Now she values stability, meaningful work, personal relationships. She is not giving up, she is adjusting. This adjustment does not feel like defeat, it feels like realism. She still takes pride in her profession, she still contributes, she still believes in certain ideals: equality, education, collective responsibility. But belief has become selective. She sees how official language diverges from lived experience. She understands the need to maintain appearances while navigating reality beneath them. This dual awareness feels shared by nearly everyone around her. Few speak of overthrow. Few speak of radical change. The system feels too large, too entrenched. Instead, people focus on living well within it. Holidays continue to mark time. May Day, Revolution Day, parades, speeches, flags. Afterward, families gather, food appears, conversations soften, ideology recedes into the background. New Year's remains the most beloved celebration, a moment of warmth, decorated trees, gifts, music, television programs watched across the country, a sense of hope that does not require political explanation. As the 1980s approach, leadership changes at the top attract little emotional response from ordinary citizens. Names change, speeches shift slightly, daily life remains the same. Natasha does not feel anxious about the future. She feels cautious. The system has endured war, terror, reconstruction, and reform. It appears permanent, even when inefficient. Few imagine its disappearance. Instead, people expect adjustment, improvement, gradual modernization. They continue to work, to gather, to raise children, to care for one another. At night, Natasha prepares for sleep. She tidies her apartment, washes dishes, waters plants, reads before bed, often poetry, sometimes technical texts, sometimes novels borrowed from friends. The city outside hums softly, trams run, cars pass, a neighbor's radio murmurs through the wall. These sounds are familiar, comforting. She lies down. The day releases its hold. Sleep arrives gently, carrying her away from calculations and compromises into rest. Tomorrow will be similar to today. Not identical, but close enough. And within this steady repetition, life continues, complex, constrained, meaningful in quiet ways that rarely appear in history books, but shape the experience of millions.
The early 1980s settle in with a particular kind of quiet. Not silence, but a steady, unchanging background hum that becomes so familiar it almost disappears. Life feels contained within known boundaries. The days unfold with little surprise. For many, that predictability is comforting. For others, it carries a faint sense of restlessness that is difficult to name. Natasha wakes one morning in 1983 to the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. The light outside is gray and diffused, spreading evenly across the buildings opposite hers. She lies still for a moment, listening. The city is already awake. Somewhere below, a bus engine starts. Footsteps echo in a stairwell. A radio plays faintly through an open window. She rises, following the same sequence of movements she has repeated for years. Wash, dress, tea, bread. A glance at the clock, a glance out the window. These small rituals provide structure. They make the transition from sleep to wakefulness gentle. At work, the Institute feels much the same as it always has. Meetings are held, reports are written, projects inch forward. The pace is slow but steady. Natasha notices that conversations increasingly circle around the same themes: delays, outdated equipment, promised improvements that never quite arrive. There is no anger in these discussions, only tired familiarity. Younger colleagues sometimes ask questions that remind her of herself years earlier. Why a certain process cannot be changed, why approval takes so long, why innovation seems to stall at the same point every time. Natasha answers carefully. She explains the formal procedures.
She also hints gently at the informal realities. Who needs to be consulted? Which departments matter most? When patience is required? This knowledge is not written down. It is passed quietly, like a map of hidden paths. During lunch breaks, colleagues sit together in the cafeteria. Trays slide along metal rails. Soup is ladled. Bread is distributed. The food is adequate. No one expects more. Conversations remain light. Children, weekend plans, a television program that aired the night before. Sometimes someone mentions travel, not abroad but within the country. A sanatorium voucher, a holiday on the Black Sea. These opportunities are prized. They represent rest, warmth, and a brief change of scenery. Natasha applied for a vacation voucher months ago. She does not know yet if she will receive one. She has learned not to expect certainty. If it comes, it will come. If not, she will adjust. Evenings continue to revolve around private space. Friends visit. Natasha visits them in return. These gatherings are never elaborate. Food is simple. Tea is plentiful. Conversation flows easily. The kitchen remains the heart of these meetings, even when a living room is available. Something about the small space encourages closeness. Voices lower naturally. Words feel safer here. They talk about work, about children, about books. Someone mentioned a lecture they attended at a cultural center. Another speaks of a concert that sold out quickly. A third hearing Western music on a late-night radio broadcast, faint and distorted but unmistakable. These fragments of outside culture feel less dangerous now than they once did. They still exist in a gray zone, neither encouraged nor harshly punished. The authorities seem to tolerate them, perhaps understanding that complete suppression would only create pressure. Natasha listens more than she speaks. She has grown comfortable in observation. She notices how people phrase things, what they leave unsaid, the careful balance between openness and caution that defines so many conversations. She also notices fatigue, not physical exhaustion, but something deeper, a weariness with repetition, with promises that feel increasingly hollow, with effort that rarely leads to meaningful change. Yet alongside this fatigue, there is attachment. People care deeply about their lives as they are, their families, their routines, their neighborhoods. The idea of upheaval feels frightening. Stability, even imperfect stability, holds value. On weekends, Natasha often visits her parents. Their apartment feels smaller than it once did, filled now with decades of accumulated objects. Preserved jars line shelves, old newspapers sit stacked neatly. The furniture bears marks of long use. Her parents move more slowly now. Their conversations linger on health, on neighbors, on memories of earlier years. They speak of the past not with nostalgia, but with comparison. How difficult things once were, how much has improved. They do not dismiss present frustrations, but they place them within a longer story. After meals, they sometimes sit quietly, listening to the radio. Classical music fills the room. The state invests heavily in high culture. Concerts are broadcast regularly. These moments feel generous, beautiful. Natasha appreciates them deeply. Back in her own apartment, nights stretch long. Winter darkness arrives early. She fills evenings with reading, poetry, novels, technical texts. Some books are officially available, others circulate quietly among friends, passed hand to hand, read carefully, returned discreetly. These books offer different perspectives, not necessarily oppositional, just broader. Music plays softly from her cassette player. The sound is imperfect. Tapes hiss, songs warp slightly, but familiarity remains. Certain melodies feel like companions. As the months pass, leadership changes at the top of the country make little immediate difference in daily life. Names change, faces appear on television, speeches are delivered. Natasha watches with mild interest but no strong emotion. The system feels immense. It has endured much. Individual leaders come and go, but structures remain. At work, whispers circulate about reforms, about new approaches, about possible changes in how things are managed. These rumors appear occasionally, then fade. Natasha has learned not to invest hope in them too quickly. Still, something feels different. Perhaps it's generational. Younger colleagues seem less patient, more openly curious, less willing to accept explanation as resolution. They ask questions more directly. They express dissatisfaction more clearly, though still cautiously. Natasha recognizes herself in them. She also recognizes how the system responds. Slowly, selectively. She finds herself standing between generations, translating expectations in both directions, offering reassurance without dismissing concern. This role feels natural. She has spent years navigating dual awareness, public conformity, private understanding. It has become a way of being. At night, as she prepares for sleep, she reflects briefly on her life. Not with regret, with realism. She has built something meaningful within the available framework. She has relationships that sustain her, work that challenges her, even when it frustrates. She does not feel trapped. She feels contained. Outside, Moscow continues its quiet motion. Streetlights glow. Snow falls softly in winter. Rain slicks pavement in spring. The seasons turn, indifferent to policy. Sleep arrives gently. Tomorrow will resemble today. Work, conversations, adjustments, small pleasures, small disappointments. And within this steady flow, a subtle shift continues to build, barely perceptible, yet growing, like pressure beneath a surface that still appears calm. The city rests. So does Natasha, and with her, millions of others, each carrying their own balance of acceptance and questioning, stability and unease, as the era moves slowly towards something not yet named.
By the middle of the 1980s, something subtle but unmistakable begins to change in the atmosphere of daily life. It does not arrive as a single event or announcement. There is no clear moment when people stop and say that the era has shifted. Instead, the change reveals itself gradually, through tone, through language, through the way conversations unfold and the way silences feel heavier than they once did. Natasha senses it first at work. Meetings still follow the same format. Reports are still written in the same careful language. Plans are still discussed as if they exist in a stable future. Yet the confidence beneath the words feels thinner. Decisions are postponed more often. Responsibility is passed sideways instead of upward. Everyone seems to be waiting for something, though no one can say exactly what. New phrases begin to circulate quietly. Words like renewal, restructuring, openness. They appear first in official speeches, then in newspaper articles, then in conversations at lunch tables and kitchen gatherings. At first, they sound like familiar slogans, another variation on promises that have been made many times before. But gradually, the tone changes. People begin to speak a little more freely, not openly critical, but less careful. Jokes push further than they once would have. Questions linger instead of being dismissed immediately. The boundaries that once felt solid begin to feel negotiable. Natasha notices this shift in herself as well. She finds herself asking questions she once kept private, not loudly, not in meetings, but in conversations with trusted colleagues. Why certain projects have stalled for years? Why information moves so slowly? Why solutions that seem obvious remain untouched? The answers are rarely satisfying, but the fact that such questions are now asked at all feels significant. Outside of work, daily life continues much as before. Shops remain unpredictable, lines still form suddenly, information about deliveries spreads through informal networks. People still rely on personal connections to solve practical problems. The system of adaptation remains intact. Yet even here, change is felt. Newspapers publish articles that acknowledge difficulties more openly than before.
Television programs include discussions that feel less scripted. Historical events, once treated cautiously, are mentioned with greater detail. The past, which had been presented as a clear narrative, begins to show complexity. Natasha reads carefully. She does not rush to conclusions. Years of experience have taught her patience, but she feels something loosening, a sense that the space between public and private understanding may be narrowing. Her evenings remain centered in her apartment. Friends continue to gather around her kitchen table. Tea is poured, plates are shared. Conversation unfolds slowly. But now, topics that once required careful phrasing are discussed more directly. People speak of frustration openly, of wasted potential, of the desire for change, even if no one knows what that change should look like. Some are hopeful. They speak of reform as an opportunity, a chance to fix what has long felt broken. Others are wary. They fear instability more than stagnation. They remember how quickly order can collapse. Natasha listens. She recognizes both impulses within herself. She values the security the system has provided: education, employment, housing, predictability. At the same time, she feels the weight of its limitations more sharply now, the sense that life has been managed rather than lived fully. Friends bring news from different corners of society. A cousin who works in publishing speaks of books that were once impossible to print now being discussed openly. A colleague mentions attending a lecture where questions were asked without consequence. Another talks about travel restrictions being eased slightly, though the process remains complicated. These stories circulate like signals, small but persistent. At her parents' apartment, conversations take on a different tone as well. Her mother listens to the radio attentively, noting changes in language. Her father, once dismissive of politics, now watches television discussions with careful interest. They speak cautiously, aware that change carries risk, but even they acknowledge that something feels different. "You hear things now that you never heard before," her father says one evening, not with excitement, but with quiet disbelief. Natasha nods. She thinks of her childhood, of the clarity with which the world was once presented, of the certainty that history moved in one direction, that the future was planned. Now that certainty feels less firm. At work, younger colleagues seem energized. They talk about possibilities, about new ways of doing things, about openness as if it were a tangible force rather than a slogan. Natasha admires their optimism. She also worries for them. Change, she knows, is rarely gentle. As months pass, the rhythm of life begins to feel uneven. Some rules are enforced less strictly, others remain rigid. Contradictions multiply. It becomes harder to predict outcomes. This unpredictability is new. The old system, for all its flaws, was reliable in its own way. It moved slowly, but it moved consistently. Now, movement feels faster, but less controlled. Natasha experiences moments of excitement she did not expect. Reading an article that acknowledges failures openly, hearing a radio discussion that includes multiple perspectives, attending a cultural event where expression feels less constrained. She also experiences moments of anxiety, watching prices shift unpredictably, hearing rumors of shortages, seeing confusion among managers who no longer know which rules apply. Her personal life remains stable, but she feels the ground shifting beneath familiar routines. Sleep comes less easily some nights. Thoughts linger longer. Questions repeat themselves. What will change? What will remain? What will be lost? She does not ask these questions aloud often. They feel too large, too uncertain. Instead, she focuses on immediate reality: work, friends, family, daily tasks. This focus provides grounding. As the decade moves forward, public spaces feel more alive. Discussions appear in newspapers. Meetings include genuine debate. Cultural life flourishes in unexpected ways. Theaters experiment. Writers explore previously avoided themes. Music grows bolder. At the same time, practical difficulties intensify. Supply chains falter. Inflation begins to creep quietly into everyday transactions. The old guarantees feel less secure. Natasha notices how people respond differently. Some embrace change eagerly. They seek opportunity. They talk about initiative and independence. Others retreat inward. They cling to familiar routines. They worry about losing what little stability they have. The city reflects this tension. Moscow feels restless. Crowds move with more urgency. Expressions more animated. The quiet resignation of earlier years gives way to something sharper, more alert. Natasha walks through the city often in the evenings, observing. She passes buildings that once symbolized permanence and now feel uncertain. She watches people gathering in small groups, talking animatedly, gesturing, debating. History feels closer now, less abstract. At home, she organizes her life carefully. She saves money when possible. She keeps her apartment orderly. She maintains friendships that provide emotional lighter. She thinks often about the future, but not in grand terms. She wonders how daily life will change, whether work will remain stable, whether housing will remain secure, whether the rhythms she has built her life around will continue to exist. She does not yet imagine collapse. Few do. Most people expect reform to smooth rough edges, not to dismantle the entire structure. As night falls, Natasha prepares for sleep. She washes dishes, turns off lights, listens briefly to the radio. The voices sound different now, less certain, more human. Outside, the city hums with unfamiliar energy. Not chaos, not calm, something in between. She lies down and closes her eyes. Sleep arrives, though it takes longer than before. Dreams are less settled. Images shift, faces blur. The future appears as a shape without clear edges. Tomorrow will bring another day of work, another set of conversations, another step into uncertainty that still feels manageable, still feels contained within the familiar outline of daily life. For now, rest is possible. The city continues breathing around her. And within that breath, change gathers quietly, waiting for its moment to fully arrive.
Change does not arrive all at once. It advances unevenly, accelerating in some places while stalling in others. By the late 1980s, the sense of transition has become impossible to ignore, yet its direction remains uncertain. Life continues, but the ground beneath it feels less stable than before. Natasha notices this most clearly in small, everyday moments. At the market, prices shift unpredictably. Items that were once affordable suddenly cost more. Others disappear entirely, only to reappear weeks later without explanation. People stand in lines longer than before, not just to buy food, but to exchange information. Who has seen butter recently? Where meat might appear tomorrow? Which shop received sugar that morning? These conversations feel different now. There is urgency where there was once resignation. Money, once secondary to access, begins to matter in new ways. Savings lose value quietly. People worry without fully understanding why. The rules they lived by for decades no longer apply consistently. At work, the institute feels strained. Projects stall not because of bureaucracy alone, but because funding becomes uncertain. Equipment orders are delayed indefinitely. Younger colleagues speak openly about leaving for private enterprises that have begun to emerge on the edges of legality. The idea that one might choose where to work, rather than be assigned, feels both exciting and unsettling. Natasha listens carefully. She has spent her life inside a system that defined pathways clearly. Education led to work led to housing. Stability followed compliance. Now these links weaken. Meetings grow chaotic. Managers struggle to interpret new directives that contradict old ones. No one seems entirely certain who holds authority. Responsibility diffuses. Decisions are postponed or reversed. This uncertainty seeps into daily behavior. People become more expressive. Emotions appear closer to the surface. Anger, excitement, fear, hope, sometimes all within the same conversation. The careful restraint that once governed public interaction loosens. Natasha notices it on the metro. Passengers speak more freely. Arguments break out occasionally. Laughter appears unexpectedly. The quiet discipline of earlier years gives way to something more volatile, more human. Advertisements begin to appear in places where propaganda once dominated. Small signs, handwritten notices, offers of services, repairs, tutoring, private exchanges. The city feels crowded with possibility and anxiety at the same time. At home, Natasha's evenings remain centered on familiar rituals. She cooks with whatever ingredients she has managed to secure. She cleans. She reads. She listens to the radio, now filled with voices that sound less rehearsed, less certain. Friends visit often. The kitchen table once again becomes a place of long conversations. Tea flows, plates are shared, but the tone has changed. Where earlier discussions revolved around coping and adaptation, now they revolve around interpretation. What does this mean? Where is this going? Who will benefit? Who will lose? Some friends speak with excitement. They imagine opportunity, travel, choice, creative freedom. They talk about opening small businesses, about publishing ideas long suppressed, about shaping their own futures. Others speak with fear. They worry about unemployment, about rising costs, about losing the guarantees that made life predictable. They remember stories from earlier generations about chaos and hardship. Natasha finds herself somewhere between these extremes. She feels curiosity, a sense that new space has opened around her, space she did not know existed. At the same time, she feels loyalty to the life she has built, to the stability that allowed her to grow, to learn, to live without constant fear of survival. At her parents' apartment, these tensions play out differently. Her parents watch developments with concern rather than excitement. They have lived through instability before. They value order deeply. The idea that rules might dissolve frightens them more than restrictions ever did. "This is moving too fast," her mother says one evening, stirring tea slowly. "Things should change carefully." Her father nods. You cannot pull apart a house without knowing what holds it together. She understands them. She also understands her younger colleagues, who have never known extreme hardship and therefore feel less fear of disruption. This generational divide runs quietly through families, workplaces, friendships. Public discussion becomes louder. Newspapers publish criticism openly. Television debates include disagreement. Historical events once presented as unquestionable truths are re-examined publicly. People react strongly. Some feel betrayed. Others feel relieved. Natasha reads carefully. She is aware that truth is complex. She has lived long enough to know that no single narrative captures reality fully. As political structures shift, everyday systems strain. Transportation falters. Infrastructure deteriorates. Repairs are delayed. Services become inconsistent. People compensate through personal networks as they always have, but now the gaps are larger. Markets expand unofficially. Informal trading increases. Barter returns quietly. Someone exchanges spare parts for food. Someone else offers services in return for goods. This adaptation feels familiar, yet intensified. Cultural life explodes. Artists speak openly. Writers publish works that would have been impossible years ago. Musicians perform songs that directly address social issues. Audiences respond passionately. Applause feels charged with meaning beyond entertainment. Natasha attends some of these events cautiously. She feels energized and overwhelmed. Expression feels raw, urgent, sometimes careless. Boundaries that once provided structure now seem absent. She appreciates the honesty. She worries about consequences. At work, colleagues leave. Some resign to join new ventures. Some are dismissed as institutions restructure. Natasha remains, partly from caution, partly for loyalty. She continues her work as best she can, even as its relevance feels increasingly uncertain.
She notices how quickly identities shift. Once, being an engineer carried clear meaning. Now that meaning feels unstable. Status erodes. Expertise matters differently. Connections take new forms. This redefinition of self unsettles her. She has always understood who she was in relation to the system. Now that reference point weakens. Even sleep feels different. Some nights, Natasha lies awake longer than before. Thoughts circle. The future feels present, pressing against her awareness. Not as a clear path, but as a widening field of possibilities and risks. She dreams more vividly. Images of movement, of crowds, of doors opening and closing. Dreams do not frighten her, but they leave her restless. During the day, she walks through Moscow and observes carefully. The city feels louder, more crowded, more alive. Street vendors appear where none existed before. Performers draw small audiences. Protest gatherings form and dissolve. History feels immediate. At the same time, ordinary life continues stubbornly. People still wake early, still go to work, still cook dinner, still care for children, still gather with friends. This coexistence of upheaval and routine feels surreal. Natasha realizes that large systems do not collapse neatly. They fray, they stretch, they contradict themselves. For now, she focuses on what she can control. She maintains her home, she nurtures friendships, she listens carefully, she avoids rash decisions. She understands that whatever comes next will demand adaptation, just as previous decades did, but in new ways. As evening falls, she returns home once again. She prepares a simple meal. She sits quietly for a while, listening to the city through her window. Voices, traffic, distant music. She feels both older and younger than her years. Older because she has witnessed stability, stagnation, and now transformation. Younger because uncertainty forces her to imagine possibilities she never considered before. Night deepens. Tomorrow will bring new developments, new rumors, new changes. For now, rest remains possible. She lies down. The city hums around her, restless and alive, carrying millions of lives forward through a moment that will later be called historic, though to those living inside it, it feels simply like life becoming harder to predict, one ordinary day at a time.
The days no longer follow the smooth, predictable curves they once did. By the early 1990s, time itself seems to behave differently. Weeks pass quickly, yet each day feels dense, filled with decisions that once did not exist. Life has become louder, faster, and more uncertain, even as familiar routines stubbornly persist. Natasha wakes before her alarm more often now, not because of noise, but because her mind refuses to remain fully at rest. Thoughts arrive early, forming loose chains that pull her toward wakefulness. She lies still for a moment, listening to the apartment. The refrigerator hums. Pipes click softly. Somewhere outside, a car passes on wet pavement. The city is awake earlier these days. She rises and moves through her morning routine with practiced ease. Wash, dress, tea, bread. The motions remain unchanged, but the meaning beneath them is shifted. What once felt like stable repetition now feels like an anchor she grips tightly as everything else moves. Outside, Moscow looks familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Buildings stand where they always have, but the spaces between them feel altered. Kiosks appear on corners where nothing stood before. Handwritten signs advertise services, goods, opportunities. People linger in groups, talking animatedly. There is more color now, more motion, more tension. At work, the institute barely resembles what it was a decade earlier. Departments have merged, then split. Projects have been abandoned midway through development. Funding arrives unpredictably, if at all. Some colleagues remain, clinging to professional identity and routine. Others have left entirely, drawn toward emerging private enterprises or pushed out by restructuring. Natasha remains,
though the reasons are no longer clear even to her. Once, staying meant stability. Now it means continuity, a link to a version of herself that existed before everything became uncertain. She continues her work with diligence, even when its future feels doubtful. Meetings feel improvised. Language shifts constantly. Words like market, competition, and efficiency appear more often, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes aggressively. No one fully understands how these ideas fit into daily practice. Managers appear overwhelmed. Authority feels fragmented. Responsibility moves erratically, landing briefly before shifting again. Natasha notices how much emotional energy is now spent simply trying to understand the rules. The mental effort once devoted to adaptation within a stable system is now devoted to interpretation of constant change. During breaks, conversations are intense. Colleagues speak openly about salaries losing value, about savings disappearing, about prices rising faster than pay. Some express excitement at new possibilities. Others speak with bitterness or fear. Emotions surface quickly now. The restraint of earlier years has loosened. At lunch, food remains simple, but obtaining it has become more complicated. Shops are fuller in some ways, emptier in others. Choice increases, but affordability declines. Shelves display items few can buy regularly. Inequality becomes visible in a way it never was before. Natasha feels this sharply. She earns nominally more than she once did, but money feels unstable. Its meaning shifts constantly. She calculates expenses carefully. She postpones purchases. She adapts. After work, she walks more often than she used to. The metro remains reliable, but walking allows her to observe the city more closely. Street life feels raw now. Vendors call out offers. Performers draw small crowds. Arguments break out openly. Laughter follows just as quickly. She passes buildings that once symbolized permanence and authority. They look the same, yet their presence feels diminished. The certainty they once projected has evaporated. At home, evenings stretch long. Natasha's apartment remains a refuge. She keeps it orderly. She cooks with care. She reads when she can focus. She listens to music, now easily accessible from many sources. Western songs play openly on the radio. What once felt illicit now feels ordinary. Friends visit frequently. The kitchen table once again becomes central. Conversations are longer, more urgent. Tea is poured. Bottles appear occasionally. Food is shared generously when available. They talk about everything: work, money, politics, the past, the future. Topics once avoided entirely now dominate discussion. Opinions clash openly. Disagreements emerge without fear of immediate consequence. Natasha listens, speaks, reflects. She notices how quickly people redefine themselves. A former engineer now runs a small business. A teacher considers leaving education entirely. A factory worker travels abroad for short-term labor. Identity becomes fluid. This fluidity excites some and terrifies others. Natasha feels both responses within herself. She values freedom of expression. The ability to speak honestly without calculation feels liberating. Access to information expands her understanding of the world and her place within it. At the same time, she misses predictability, the quiet assurance that tomorrow would resemble today, that basic needs would be met without constant negotiation. At her parents' apartment, the contrast is stark. They struggle with change more visibly. Fixed pensions lose value. Prices rise. Familiar reference points disappear. They watch the news obsessively, trying to make sense of developments that move faster than explanation. Conversations are tinged with anxiety. "We didn't live this long to end up uncertain again," her mother said one evening, her voice tight with fatigue. Natasha does what she can. She brings food when possible. She helps navigate new systems. She listens patiently. She reassures without promising what she cannot guarantee. This role weighs on her. She is no longer simply navigating her own life. She's helping others navigate as well. Public spaces feel charged. Protests occur more frequently. Some are hopeful, some angry. People demand accountability, clarity, improvement. The language of certainty has vanished. Everything feels provisional. Natasha observes these gatherings from a distance. She understands the emotions driving them. She also understands how easily momentum can turn destructive. She remains cautious. At night, sleep becomes unpredictable. Some evenings, exhaustion pulls her quickly into rest. Other nights, thoughts circle relentlessly. She replays conversations, calculates possibilities, imagines futures that diverge wildly from the life she once expected. She dreams of movement, of traveling through unfamiliar streets, of standing in crowds where voices overlap chaotically. Dreams leave her unsettled but alert. The city outside mirrors this restlessness. Lights burn late, music plays loudly, arguments echo through open windows. Life feels urgent, compressed. Yet even now, ordinary moments persist. Neighbors greet each other, children play in courtyards, people cook dinner, care for plants, walk dogs. These small continuities provide comfort. Natasha clings to them. She understands that systems can collapse while human routines endure, that life finds ways to continue even when structures fail. As months pass, headlines grow more dramatic, institutions dissolve, borders shift, words like end and beginning appear frequently, often in the same sentence. Natasha feels history pressing close. She thinks often about her younger self, about mornings in communal apartments, about factory noise, about the stability she once questioned but relied upon. She recognizes how deeply that world shaped her. She does not romanticize it. She remembers its limitations clearly, the restrictions, the quiet compromises, the narrowing of choice. But she also remembers its coherence. Now coherence feels scarce. As evening falls, she prepares a simple meal. She eats slowly. She washes dishes carefully. She sits quietly for a while, listening to the city. Tomorrow will bring new developments, new adjustments, new calculations. For now, there is this moment, this apartment, this breath, this pause between days. She turns off the light and lies down. Sleep comes unevenly, but it comes. Outside, Moscow continues its restless movement, carrying millions of lives through a period of transformation that will later be analyzed, categorized, debated. Inside, one woman rests, gathering strength for another day of navigating a world that no longer promises stability, but still offers connection, meaning, and the quiet persistence of ordinary life.